Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from the broadcast team Alpha Show on 44 different platforms around the world. And my name is Aage, and I'm the host. My co-host is not here, but she will be back. And we are also transmitting on the Conscious Awakening Network platform. That's kind of unique because it is a platform that is totally independent. They cannot be messed with. There is no chance of any censorship. So, no censorship. That means that's where they keep the good stuff. That's why you got to go and visit with them. Go to consciousawakeningnetwork.org. And as you remember, you can see a lot more. So go over there and have a look. I think you're going to like it. And then also, I want to tell you how you can get a hold of me and Nori. Just go to broadcastteamalpha.com and find the contact feature and then send us an email. We'll get the email and we'll get back to you and see what we can do for you. And then if you are watching this on YouTube, that's the place to be because that's the only place we can monitor the chat room. Most other platforms don't give us chat rooms, so especially in the TV and radio stations, we get nothing. So anyway, yeah, just get a hold of us, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe. That'll help us a lot. And then, oh, I wanted to tell you that about 5 years ago, Nori and I created a spiritual think tank where we do incredible things. It seems like we are creating out of seemingly nothing sometimes. Because remember, quantum mechanics tells us we live in a mind-created universe. We create things in our mind, place it into the quantum field, and then we go there later because whatever is in that quantum field is potential for physical creation, and we pull it back into the physicality. And things happen that science cannot explain, like creating rain out of nearly clear skies, have a healing for somebody on their deathbed in the hospital within 24 hours, and many other things like that. So if you like to be part of something that is bigger than yourself, send us an email and come and check it out and see if you like to be part of something like that. So send it to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. Themastermindconnection@gmail.com. I will send you some information and a link so you can come and check it out on Sundays. And I think you're going to enjoy it. So now we're going to have some fun. I have Preston Dennett returning to Broadcast Team Alpha. And I'll tell you, he's been here several times, and I've been on the edge of my chair every time because there's so much good information. He's also the host, or I should say co-host, because he's got a lady there with him that they do good work. The show that they're doing is called The Light Gate. Go to YouTube and check it out. They have phenomenal stuff on there about UFOs and extraterrestrial, and they get into consciousness and a lot of other things also. So The Light Gate, go check it out. You're gonna like it. And well, next you will hear about the best of UFO research because that is Preston. He is one of the best researchers I have ever run across. And I don't say that a lot. I may have said it once before, but that was when Preston was on. So, so anyway, he has written 32 books. God, 32 books. And he has written about first-hand accounts of people who have had encounters with extraterrestrials and UFOs and have been on the ships and explain what it looks like inside. And that is what we're going to talk about today. What does it look like inside the UFOs and the ships? What do the aliens look like? What do they do? What kind of communication do people get when they are inside? And what do the extraterrestrials do to them? We're going to cover a lot of that. He has he has written a book called Inside UFOs, and we're going to cover a lot of that from that book. And of course, you can find the books on Amazon and everywhere where books are sold. So here we go, off to the races. Welcome to the show, Preston.
Thank you, Aage. Thanks very much for having me on. Thanks also for the shout out for the light gate. We had the honor of having you as a guest twice, Dolly and I. So that was all kinds of fun.
Oh, maybe there's time to do that again.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, that's always good stuff to talk about. But I tell you, that you told me some of the stories of people being on the ships, and I couldn't find anything to interrupt your talk when you were talking about that because it was so interesting. Uh, Go into that book and tell us some of the most interesting things in it.
Yeah, I absolutely love this topic. Huge shout out to my sister-in-law, Kisara, for the cover. It's one of the most beautiful covers I think of all my books.
Yeah,
So she's amazing.
yeah.
And I really wanted to focus on cases of absolute direct contact. Not every single chapter involves someone who's actually taken on board, but certainly everyone has face-to-face encounters with ETs or a very extensive contact of some kind, which has really been my specialty because there's so many books out there that are basically rehashes of old cases. No, these are all new cases. I did my, boots on the ground research with these. So it's really astonishing to hear these first-hand stories that have never been published before. And it's really hard to choose which
Yeah.
are my favorite. But each one, I think, has some really interesting aspects to it. Every case, I think, has something to offer in terms of advancing our understanding of what's going on here. I'd like to start with this case because this is a
Hmm.
lady I worked with for a very long time. Her name is
Hmm.
Connie Lopez, a lovely lady. We uh, are still in contact, and we had worked together for a while. And she kind of always knew I was a researcher, but didn't really, I guess, think about it or ask me about it until one day. Turned out my boss actually had bought me these little alien figurines, 4 inches high, of various ET types, praying mantis, grays, human looking. And she walks into my office and yeah,
Like this little guy.
very close to
Yeah.
that. And so she walks into my office and sees one of these little gray figurines, and she absolutely loses her mind. She screams out loud. And I'm like, what? She, and she points to the little gray and said, what is that? Well, Connie, what do you think it is? And she says, well, I don't know, but I can tell you I saw that. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Now, this is really cool to me because this is a person I know. And this is someone I love and trust and know well, which is always a huge bonus when you're trying to interview somebody. So I persuaded her without any trouble to tell me her story. And it was so interesting, Augie. It was 1969.
Uh,
She's living in Arleta, California. I know where this is. It's a pretty crowded suburb right outside of Los Angeles, very densely populated. This is 1969, so perhaps not as dense as today.
yeah.
Uh, she has two daughters, age 2 and 4, and just had a brand new baby boy,
Mhm.
about a week old. Just brought him home. So he's sharing the room with her and her husband. His crib is in the corner, has a little mobile hanging down with little, circles and of shapes and stuff. So Connie wakes up in the middle of the night because she hears this strange sound like, that squeaky sound when you're cleaning dishes, like rubbing
Hmm.
your finger on a glass and it goes
Yeah.
squeak, squeak. That's the kind of sound she heard. And it woke her up. So she's looking around thinking, what the heck is going on? Looks to this big picture window in her bedroom. Now, this is a window that is fixed to the wall. It doesn't open. There's no latches. It's absolutely a fixed window. And looking to this window, she sees a gray ET, 6 feet tall. It's Now she said a really interesting detail I've only heard a couple of times. She said it had very long fingers, and at the tip of each finger were these little suction cups, kind of like octopus tentacles.
Mhm.
Uh, this does turn up in cases, but it's exceedingly rare. And
Mhm.
it looks to her like this gray is trying to open the window. That doesn't open. So that's like, what? Because usually these things just walk through the wall. Nope, it's trying to open a window that can open.
Uh,
Doesn't see her, or if it does, it's not paying any attention to her. It is looking at her baby. It is right there next to the window, looking straight down at her baby, up at the mobile hanging above the crib, back down at the baby. Now she's telling me this, and my first thought is, wow, how many cases do I have involving women who are 9 months pregnant, just about to have their baby, 6 months pregnant, or just had their baby? I
yeah.
mean, that happened to my own sister. She had her baby and she had this major UFO encounter. The baby was a week old.
Mhm.
So this is a pattern I see. Their interest, I think, in human reproduction. She didn't see a UFO. This thing was 6 feet tall, just standing outside the window. And so she jumps up. She sits up in bed and is about to scream when it turns and looks at her, locks eyes. She locks eyes with it. And she says that it used some kind of mind power or some kind of force to basically slam her back down in the bed.
Uh,
And at this point, she's completely paralyzed. She can't scream. She can't move. Her eyes are open, so she can still see what's going on. And she's very scared. She says tears were streaming down the sides of her face. And this gray ET stayed there for a good 5 minutes, just kind of pressing its hands up against the window and looking down at her baby for the longest time, trying to open up the window.
mhm.
At least that's what her impression was. So again,
Wow.
I don't know why it didn't walk through the wall, because that's what we usually see. After a few minutes, it walked off, and as soon as it did, she leapt out of bed and screamed,
Yeah.
scooped up her baby, and told her husband, who is like jumping out of bed, like, what the heck is wrong with you? And she's like, I just saw this thing. I saw this thing. It tried to get our baby. I can't stay here. We got to get out of here right now. And he's like, calm down, calm down. All you did was have a nightmare. She's like, no, it
Oh,
was not a nightmare. I was awake. So they
yeah.
started arguing about that. And she stayed up all night holding her baby and said, you know what? I can't stay here right now. I am going over to, I think it was her mother's,
Yeah.
who lived not too far away. And she did. And she stayed there for 2 weeks. And finally, her husband's like, "You have to come home." She says, "I'm not coming home." You know, she, how about we buy guard dogs?
Yeah.
And so they did. And she agreed to come home. No, couldn't stay there. She's like, "I want to move. I want to move. I want to move. I want to move." And they ended up moving. over this, moving out of that house. Such a
Wow.
crazy case. No, she wasn't taken on board. She doesn't
Mhm.
have any history of encounters, not
Mhm.
that she's aware of. But
So that was only the one time then, huh? There was no more after that?
no,
Mm.
she's very psychic. She's had a lot of, ghostly encounters and
Yeah.
things like that. But
Mm.
no, that was it in terms of this encounter. And she never talked about it. And didn't want to bring it up. And I never knew. If I had known I'd
Yeah.
worked with her for, a number of years.
I
And
wonder then, the ET was looking at the baby. I wonder what the intentions were because I haven't heard much about babies being abducted. Have they mostly young people or adults?
yeah, I can't say that I have either. But I do know of a few cases. I mean, Dolly Saffron does recall
Yeah?
being taken when she was in her crib. She's got a
Oh,
remarkable memory. So,
yeah.
and certainly there are cases of people who are looking for their kids and they're not in their room. We know contact starts at a very young age. And generally speaking, I think it coincides with people's memory of down to 4, 5, 6 years old, which is when,
Hmm.
our memory really kicks in, but could very well be much earlier.
What
So
about
I don't know.
what about that baby? When the baby grew up, is there any history with that baby having contact?
Good question. No. No, he became an executive for Coca-Cola,
Oh yeah?
lived a very successful life, never had any encounters, and was, by
Never.
all accounts, a normal child.
Yeah.
Nothing particularly unusual happening with him.
Well,
None of the other siblings had encounters, not the husband.
yeah.
Uh,
It's
who,
probably a good thing then that the ET could not open the window.
well, it doesn't open. I mean, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah.
That's one that's it's a little bit of a head scratcher for me because we know these
Hmm.
guys are very intelligent. We know they're profoundly psychic.
Yeah.
I know this lady is not lying to me.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah. Oh,
it's
there's
it's an interesting encounter.
thousands of stories out there. What about what does it look like inside the UFO?
Ah, well, that kind of depends on who you talk to. We do have pretty consistent details of what it looks inside, almost without exception. And this is so funny when you hear people trying to describe this. There's indirect lighting because
Yeah.
people will go into, and it's very well lit. Yeah, you will not find a lamp. You will not find fluorescent lighting or any direct light source. It's as if the walls glow.
Yeah. No
And
light bulb.
not even quite the walls. I mean, sometimes people will say, oh, yeah, the walls were glowing, but it's as if there's just light there
Okay.
in the space. That's
Yeah.
very, very consistent. It's almost without exception. Another very, very common detail is people will describe the interior of these craft as having no seams, no corners. It's as if it's molded out of one giant piece of what appears to be metal, but not really, because often people will describe how it has a slight give to it. You can
Oh.
press on it and it's soft.
Oh.
I've heard people describe it as like dolphin skin.
Mhm.
Um, this is not always the case. Some would say, oh, it looked metallic, shiny metal, the dull side of aluminum foil. One guy, a Tim from Louisiana, said he had never felt anything so smooth in his life. It was smoother than glass. You could touch it and your hand would just slide against it, which, you can do with glass, but there's a slight friction there. He says there
Yeah.
was almost no friction whatsoever, which was really cool.
Mm.
People will describe usually silver walls, white walls, occasional reports of pastel colors, like blue perhaps. That's not super common.
Mhm.
But yeah, rounded walls. I mean, the floor is flat and the walls are generally flat, but they round into
Yeah.
the walls and the ceiling. Smaller rooms usually, but sometimes quite large. And people will describe tables that come out of the floor like a single pedestal, usually, sometimes just floating there. Uh, and the
Oh,
tables are not normal tables. They're reclined slightly and they will sort of mold to your body and are comfortable generally. Depending on your level of fear, people will, not be comfortable because they're just so darn afraid.
yeah.
But as often as not, people will describe a chair, which is more somewhat similar to a dentist chair without all the doodads and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reports are very consistent. Yes, people do report portholes, but not like you would think of a window that we see with a frame or what do you
Yeah.
call it, bars going across it. These, it's almost as if the ETs have the ability to turn the walls utterly transparent. Transparent to the point where it doesn't even look like you're looking through glass. It looks like you could stick your hand right through it.
Mm,
Here's a good example from the book. This is probably my favorite case in the book, which is really extensive. Kevin Kamin is his name.
mm,
Now, he's a Navy medic, a corpsman, 6 foot tall, just 6'2". He passed away about 4 years ago. God bless him.
mm.
Wonderful man. Uh, Heard me lecturing in San Diego and came up to me afterwards because I had talked about a praying mantis case.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, "Well, the picture you put up is pretty close. It's not quite exact to what I saw." So I'm like, "Well, what did you see?" And I've interviewed him probably a dozen times, and his story has never changed. He's been
Mm.
on the radio before he passed, and I listened to that. I'm like, wow, yep, his stories remains consistent. A trained observer, a very intelligent guy
Mm-hmm.
who was on an aircraft carrier in, gosh, this was in 1978, and he had a bunkmate who I do know his name, but I'm not allowed to use it, so I call him Larry. They shared a room, and Larry was very brave. He would eat fish head soup or whatever strange food that they had because they had shore leave and they eat all these different things.
Yeah.
He had no fear. Just a fearless guy, and they became good friends. And Larry starts talking one day about UFOs. Now, Kevin had always believed in UFOs because he did a book report as a child on the subject and found out, oh, this is a real subject. So
Yeah.
Larry tells him, I'm a contactee. And Kevin's like, oh, really? And Larry says, oh, yeah, I've been taken since I was a little kid. They take me from my bedroom. I go up on their ships. They actually took me to their planet. I'm still in contact with them. And Kevin, while he believed in UFOs, is kind of giving him the side eye, like, really? And Larry's like, hey, I'm telling you the truth. And Kevin's like, well, if that's true, I'd like to meet your little green friends. Direct quote. So Larry just kind of smiles and says, okay, I'll see what I can do. Mind you, they're on a ship in I think it was the Pacific, no, no, it was the Atlantic, towards the Bermuda Triangle area, actually. Uh, and a couple of days later, Larry comes back and says, well, they took me, I went to your house. And Kevin's like, well, what are you talking about? And Larry starts describing his house in detail. So it was instantly clear to Kevin that this man was legit because he was describing like the shag rug and a milkshake stain on the automobile and pictures. But here's the weird thing, Augie. Everything he was describing was like 10 years ago. So
Oh.
that was like, did this guy time travel? And what's going on here? It was very confusing to him. And he's thinking, are you CIA? That didn't
Yeah.
make sense because, they were on a ship. There was no chance of him going there and knowing this stuff.
Yeah.
But he says, well, they agreed to pick you up and they're going to come in a couple of days. And Kevin's still thinking this is kind of a joke, but
Yeah.
not entirely convinced, right? And couple of days go by, and Larry comes rushing into the cabin. It's high noon. This is the middle of the day. Their cabin is right close to the deck.
Yeah.
What did he do? He was an office clerk, I think. At any rate, he says, "Go up on deck. They're there. They're waiting for you." And Kevin's like, "Well, all right, sure." So he was on his lunch break, so he had the time. Goes out on deck, and a huge shock because this is a 600-foot long ship. This craft is next to the ship about a quarter mile off and looks bigger than the ship. It looks bigger than the Navy ship itself.
Mhm.
And just flashing these beautiful, almost prismatic colors.
Yeah.
And he says, I had a hard time describing the shape. It was so bright. And so he does what anyone who sees a UFO should do. Go get another witness. There's a lot of people on the deck there. He runs up to the mess cook and says, "Dude," starts shaking his shoulder. It was as if he wasn't there. Could not get the guy's attention. So that was very strange to him. And
Yeah.
as he's trying to do that, suddenly he notices that he is rising up and the ship is becoming smaller. And boom, he's inside this thing. Now he's very nervous. He's like, "Oh no, I'm AWOL." And he
Yeah.
hears this male voice inside his head that says, "No, nobody will even know you're missing." He's too afraid to turn around. He pinches himself to the point where he bleeds just to make sure he's not hallucinating or dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is looking outside through the wall. Wherever he looks, it turns transparent. It's a metal wall. There's a console or a little cabinet type thing next to him, which is oddly high. It's like up to his neck. Like, who is that made for? That's weird looking. And
Yeah.
so he is too scared to turn around and he starts having this conversation with these guys who he's not going to look at yet. And it's
Ah.
telepathic conversation. And there was two male voices and they started talking to him. He said, "You're not going to eat me, are you?" And they said, "No, no, we don't eat humans. You watch too many horror movies. We eat the same
Yeah.
things you eat. We eat fish, we eat chicken, eat vegetables, and things like this." And suddenly there's movement, and he finds himself hovering over his hometown of Kankakee, Illinois. And
Ah.
they show him an image of his mother teaching in school. He can see through the walls of the school, and his mother's teaching like Sunday school to these kids. And then it shifts to a couple of miles away, and they show him his father. It's daytime there, so this is like, again, the time differential is
Yeah.
off. So he's again confused. His father worked in a bank building. He was a manager, and he could see through the wall, through the ductwork, through several rooms into the center of the building where his father was having an executive meeting. And the ETs tell him, "Your parents are good people. They did a good job with you." There's another shift. He's wondering, like, my parents? You know me? What's going on here? There's
Yeah.
another shift, and they show him his childhood home. And he's there. He's a little kid. He's looking at his grandmother, who is now deceased. So again, they're showing him a picture from the past that looks
Ah.
100% real. And then it shifts again. So he's like, "Preston, I'm not quite sure of the order here because a lot happened." He's looking down at what looks like a bombing range with all these craters, and he's trying to orient himself. He's like, "Where could this possibly be? Is this a army base? What's going on?" It was like grayish landscape with all these craters. Comes up over the horizon, and he sees Earth off in the distance, and it's a small globe.
Mm.
So he can see the Earth rising from the horizon of the moon. He says he nearly lost his bowels. It's not the word he uses. He's a Navy man.
Yeah.
So
God.
he knows how to swear. And he says that's when he realized, "Oh my God, this is insane." And he asked these guys where they're from. And he said he gave me a look like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, just tell me. I've heard everything. And he says, well, the room changed size. He says it was about 50 feet across from what he would tell looking back and forth. It turned to 200 feet in diameter, and they created a holographic star chart. And he could see
Oh,
the solar system, which kind of shrunk down, and it zoomed off into the distance, and this little red light started blinking. And they said, that's where we're from. That's our star system. And they told him the name. I asked him what was the name. He's like, I can't tell you what it was. I'm like, just try. He said it had lots of consonants, and it was a nonsense word as far as he's concerned. He was
just
just
yeah,
too,
it's
you know,
complicated. Yeah,
rattled to
yeah.
really pay attention. So he's
Well,
going through this whole conversation with them, and they said that they have made contact with all the major governments of our planet and who are perfectly aware of them. Also, that they they've known about us for a very long time, can speak all the languages of our planet, and said that when we started exploding nuclear bombs, this drew the attention of not only them, but
yeah,
everybody around,
yeah,
which absolutely makes sense because that's when, of course, the modern age of UFOs began
yeah.
and
They realized
contact.
the kids found the matches.
Yep. And then said, since you started doing that, you started a countdown clock. And all these events will happen and you cannot stop them. And this is when they showed him disasters. He said it was like looking out a window at all these disasters,
Mhm.
which hadn't happened yet. And these were hurricanes mostly, but tornadoes, landslides, earthquakes, and natural disasters. And they said these will occur. And as later, when the years passed, he would only remember them when it started to occur. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
God, there it is. Now I remember.
yeah,
Uh, so finally, he gets the courage. He's like, what do you guys look like? He said, well, we're not little and we're not green. They had a sense of humor.
yeah,
Uh, and he's like, well, what do you look like? He says, well, sometimes our appearance does frighten people. And so he finally gets the courage to turn around. Turns around, and he's frightened, all right, because there in the center of the room are three what look like white stone chairs, almost thrones, on a dais. And these are praying mantis. They're bone white with enormous black eyes. He says about the size of a basketball, each eyeball.
wow,
And one stands up and takes 2 steps across the room. That's all it took, and is right next to him. He says, Preston, this thing was 15 feet tall. I'm like, Kevin, let's dive into this. That's pretty tall because
yeah,
I usually hear 7 feet. He's like, listen, Preston, I'm 6 feet 2 inches, and this was more than twice my height. It was very much like looking up at a basketball, hoop and
yeah,
backboard. And he could see its hands. They had kind of claw-like hands.
wow,
Uh, and he could see this console, which was, he said, almost nothing to it. There was really nothing on it but a few blinking lights. Uh, and one of them looks down at him and says, so, would you like to go to our planet? And he said, no, take me back. And because he was absolute, I'm like, what? You didn't want to? He's like, listen, this was scary. This was
yeah,
very scary for me. He says, I felt like a bug next to this thing.
uh,
Ironically, because they had praying mantis kind of look
yeah,
to them. He said they exuded intelligence like nobody's business. He said these were the most intelligent beings you could ever possibly imagine. They knew everything. Uh, so they said, okay, reach down with that claw-like hand and put it on his shoulder. Now he's touching them, and that's too much for him.
yeah,
He screams and passes out, wakes up, And he's not back on the deck of the ship. He is in his bunk, lying down, covered with sweat, hyperventilating and screaming. And it takes him, 5 seconds to realize, okay, I'm back. And he finally gets his bearings, and suddenly, there's curtains around each bunk, right? So you can have some privacy.
Yeah.
The curtains whoosh open, and there's his friend Larry grinning from ear to ear and says, "Oh, how did you like your little trip?" Um, Kevin was ready to smack him. He ended that relationship then and there. They were no longer friends, which is
Really?
really unfortunate, and he kind of regrets it.
Yeah.
He was not expecting that. And here's the weird thing, Augie. He says very quickly, almost all of this left his mind. He remembered being taken on board. He remembered a little bit what they looked like, not really a whole lot else
Mm.
until he was honorably discharged later and was watching a nature show with his wife, who I'm
Mm.
still in contact with. And it was about praying mantis, a little
Oh.
and they zoomed a close up, and he got a cold sweat, and all of this came pouring back into him.
Mm.
Another thing they said, he asked them about politics, and they said, "No, we will not discuss religion or politics." That's what they told him,
Um,
which I thought was kind of funny.
yeah.
Uh, uh,
But
he,
what about some of the incidents, the disasters that he talked about? Did he explain any details on that?
not a whole lot. He said he would see like Hurricane Katrina. That was
Yeah.
one of the things they showed him. There was a
Uh-huh.
mining disaster of all things, and it's like, oh, I remember they showed me that. He said the one that really struck him was he bought a new motorcycle and had just, you know, taken, I think it was the first ride on it, and ended up having this horrific accident with a terrible head injury.
Mm.
And he said when that happened, he remembered that they had showed him that, because when they showed him that, he thought he had actually died in that accident. But
Ah.
again, he would not really remember these things until he saw them
Mm.
actually happening. So it wasn't like he could predict it, so to speak.
Wow.
But he said that that must have happened 5 times, where
Uh,
you see something on TV and like, oh, this they showed me this.
mm.
Yeah, this completely changed his life. He's a twin, by the way, a fraternal twin. He's like, you
He's a
need to
what?
talk
He's a what?
a twin.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
What
and
about
in
his
fact,
twin? Twin had experiences too?
turned out he did. Yeah.
Uh,
So I ended up talking to his twin. They were fraternal twins. He's like, you should talk to my brother. He had an encounter with Grays. I'm like,
yeah.
oh gosh, here we go.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, his case is unusual because most people have a history of encounters. He didn't. He just happened to know a contactee.
Mm.
And this absolutely greatly increases your chances of having contact if your best friend is a contactee.
Yeah.
But I love that case because he is such an intelligent guy. He was so sincere. I mean, tears would come to his eyes as he describes this.
Hmm.
And he gets very vehement because he does not want people, second guessing him. It's like, you weren't there. Well, I know what happened.
Yeah.
And just puzzled him to death. I mean, he could not get this out of his mind. Uh, and
Well,
overall, it was a
yeah.
benevolent encounter, but it still really affected him profoundly.
Yeah, especially the praying mantis is hard for people to wrap their heads around because we think of praying mantis as they are here. You know, like after they mate, they eat, they bite off the male's
Yeah.
head, and they eat other insects and stuff. So this is hard for us to really come to understand.
Yeah.
But these big ones, they have grown into something that is very benevolent then.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was ultimately a very benevolent. He was not even physically examined, though later
Yeah.
he wonders if perhaps he was because he did find a little healed scar on his body,
Mm.
which really wasn't there before, and he thought perhaps he'd been implanted. He's
Oh,
not
they did.
sure,
Yeah.
really sure. That was his only encounter. I tried to get a hold of his friend, but I was not able to, even though he does have a very unusual name.
Hmm.
I really don't like to cold call people because I've gotten in trouble that way. Like, how did you find out about my encounter? And I didn't tell you. So, but
Yeah.
I did try because I would love to have talked to that man.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
What about I think it was you that told me one time that there was somebody that was invited onto a ship or abducted onto a ship, and they actually saw somebody on the ship besides the extraterrestrial that had something looked like a Air Force uniform.
oh yeah, that was Melinda Leslie. Um,
Ah,
I I interviewed her, and that was in another book, Extraterrestrial Visitations. A wonderful case because she had her two friends with her. They all
mhm.
had missing time while driving along the Los Angeles Crest Highway
Yeah.
through the forest. They were on their way to go see UFOs, in Palm Springs and try to call them down into a CE5, and ended up having a weird drive because they kept seeing lights on one side of the car and then on the other. At one point, there was deer blocking the front of the road. They
Ah,
finally arrive at Palm Lancaster, I think it was actually. They're like, gosh, the traffic is just dead. Where is everybody? And they were all very thirsty, so they stopped off at a gas station, and it's like 3 a.m. We're like, what the heck? It's 3 hours later than it should be. This is impossible. Crazy. And she had learned how to overcome missing time. She'd just sit down and meditate. And that's what she did because she realized, oh, this something's going on here. And she recalled that they had come upon a craft which was floating by the side of the road. I'm furious. How could you do this? Action of confusion and mixed emotions that swept through him during this experience was overwhelming to him. So it was very, very difficult. And that ended up being pretty much his last encounter. Because I don't know why they picked me. I'm a heavy smoker. I've got high blood pressure. I've got Crohn's disease. Not exactly an excellent genetic subject. Uh, but I'm like, did you get any benefits out of this at all? He's like, well, kinda, yeah. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He says, I'm really psychic. I'm like, let's
yeah,
dig into this. Because this is another thing I see. He says, I would be walking along the street when I get that, they'd start talking to me telepathically and say, you need to talk to that person now. You need to read them. You need to tell them this, 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 and this. And um, sometimes they give him warnings. Like they said, your tire is about to fall off. And sure enough, it was.
really?
Yeah. And I'm like, give me some other examples. Because, if this happened a lot, you can certainly remember some. He's like, well, here's a good one for you. I'm walking along the street and they say, talk to that lady, talk to that lady. It's a chorus of voices. And he walks up to this lady and they tell him to tell her, you need to go home right now. You need to go home and talk to your husband. And she's like, who the heck are you? And she's, I'm sorry, I'm just giving you the message I'm receiving. He didn't say it was ETs or anything, but you need to go home and talk to your husband right now. It's very important. She's like, I'm just going out. I just left him. He's like, go home. So that was it. He walks away. He says, I gave the message. He says, this thing has
Yeah.
happened over and over again. A couple of years later, he's in the grocery store waiting in line, and two lines over, he sees that woman and they lock gazes, and her eyes go wide, and she makes a beeline for him. He's like, oh no, here we go. Because he's shy. He doesn't want to talk about this. He didn't want his name used. He's very much, on the down low about it. And she's like, you're that man, aren't you? And he's like, I recognize you. She's like, yeah, you're the man who came up to me on the street and told me to go home and see my husband. And he's like, yeah, I remember. And she was like crying now. She says, I need to thank you. I need to thank you for what you did. Because I went home, we sat down, we had the best conversation. It was a wonderful evening, and he died in bed that night. That was the last I ever spoke to him, and I wouldn't have gotten to say goodbye. I wouldn't have gotten nothing, you know. So that was very interesting to me because, these are grays telling him
Yeah.
to talk to this woman. Why? Because they're providing a service here, giving that woman a chance to have one long last heart to heart with her husband. How beautiful is that? It's amazing to me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Huh. There is really no limitations to what the mind can do once you understand how to use it. And that's what
100%.
they have figured out.
Yeah. And this is what they're trying so hard to wake up in us because I hear this in a number of contactee cases. Corruption is choking our planet. Greed,
Yeah,
corruption, divisiveness, hatred,
yeah,
aggression. And if we can just advance our psychic abilities to become intuitive and telepathic, uh, and really
yeah,
understand that we are one,
yeah,
we can overcome that. And you'll see this with contactees almost without exception. They have these abilities of astral projection and healing and psychic reading, mediumship,
yeah,
all of this, precognition, whatever you want to call all these abilities. It's really just awareness. Really just
yes,
advancing your consciousness. All of
yes,
these things. We have labels for everything, but it's really, there's a big push on consciousness.
yeah,
I kind of like just calling it that. That's ultimately what it is. It's just advancing your own wisdom and intelligence and your awareness,
hmm,
not raising your vibration.
yeah,
It's not that at all. It's
yeah, it's,
basically gathering wisdom and knowledge and experience, and using that
yeah,
to advance your consciousness to the point where you can start to perceive things in a natural way, the natural abilities. That's
yeah,
what
it's,
that is one of the main agendas. To heal, to guide, to teach, to learn, to wake us up to the fact that we're all connected, to share our common ancestry. We have these abilities.
yeah,
In these cases, in this book, Inside UFOs, show that. And that's what I really want to do. These books that I'm putting out is let
hmm,
people just look at these cases. You can draw your own conclusions about it. I think you'll see this very prominent pattern that's absolutely good for us, despite how scary it might be for people at first. The fear is on us.
yeah,
I think fear distorts your perception. It can be very difficult and confusing for people, but it's almost always fear of the unknown. So let's make the unknown known and
yeah,
move past that. So
that's
that's what I'm
right.
trying to do with these books.
That's right. Yeah. And I see now we got 5 minutes left of the show, but let people know where they can find your books and also talk about maybe what is next for you. Are you doing conferences sure coming up or what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, you can find my books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other online retailers. Bookstores should have them. If they don't, you can certainly order them. All over social media, pretty much most of the platforms. How many platforms are there, Augie? What did you say
I
you're on set?
uh,
It's insane.
we're on 44, but I'm sure there's a few hundred out there.
So there you go. Yeah. I mean, just
Yeah.
punch my name in. You can find,
Yeah.
Reddit and
Yeah.
all of these. Uh, but yeah, I'm working currently on Symmetry 2, sequel to the Symmetry, a true UFO adventure, the experiences of Dolly Saffron. That's my big major project, other than just trying to keep up with the Light Gate,
Yeah.
each Monday evenings, 8 to 10 p.m. on my own YouTube channel. I've got some other books lined up. No
Yeah.
conventions, definitely some major podcasts that I'm very excited about and really reveal much until it actually happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some wonderful invitations to some major
Yeah.
fellows out there who are working very hard to get the truth out. I'm excited about that. Yeah, Aage,
Yeah.
thanks. It's always a joy doing your show. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity.
And I see you on conferences ever so often. So, are any of those coming up shortly?
No, not currently. If they
Hmm.
want to invite me to Contact in the Desert, I'll certainly
Yeah.
consider that. I try to do one or two conferences a year. The last one I did was Shag Harbor with Dolly,
Yeah.
actually, and Chris Stiles. Puts up his helmets each year. That was a lot of fun. If
Yeah.
anyone ever gets a chance to go to the Shag Harbor conference, do it. It's a lovely place, beautiful
Yeah.
people, wonderful speakers were there with us. Darcy Weir, Mark D'Antonio. Dolly talked about her
Yeah.
experiences. I got to talk about Canadian cases. I forget
Shag
who else
Har
was there.
Shag Harbor have its own UFO experience.
That's what it's all about. Yeah, it's one
Yeah.
of probably Canada's best confirmed case, right up there with the Stephen
Yeah.
McCulloch case and a few others. But amazing. Yeah, this subject is so important. I'm so glad to see people waking up to it. We'll see
Yeah.
what happens with this new Trump possible announcement.
Yeah.
Uh,
What do you think we're gonna get? Maybe scraps, or are we gonna get something
uh,
substantial?
I'm encouraged to, have a sitting head of state make that kind of announcement. We've never had that here in the United States, certainly. And really, I don't think any head of state has really come forward and said,
Yeah.
UFOs are real. He
Yeah.
didn't even do that. If you look at the wording of that statement very carefully, you'll see all he's doing is requesting or ordering. Uh, I don't know that presidents are really even in the loop. So I
Yeah.
am not holding my breath with this. I expect it's still going to be tightly controlled. We won't be seeing the Roswell craft. We
Yep.
won't be seeing the bodies. I doubt we're going to get the film footage that was taken at Edwards Air Force Base or all the
Yeah.
fighter jets, the gun camera footage, all that terrific evidence. I don't think we're going to see it. I think the best we could possibly hope for is filtered, fear-based,
Yeah.
uh, disinformation with kernels of truth in it. I don't think we should be looking to the lying liars to tell us the truth.
Yeah.
ETs have done their part to disclose. Everyone here on Earth knows what UFOs are. In fact, our governments are still, backpedaling the subject. Shows that we
Yeah.
should not be looking at them for answers. So I'm not no, it's a nothing burger. It's all the trust there to say the United States. And one of the truth about this subject, look to them, not going to get it. Look to the contactees.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when these statements started to come out, because on the mastermind we did a visualization and we did a manifestation of disclosure. And we said, in the mastermind, when all of us have joined our minds together, we said we will have a disclosure within 30 days. 2 days later, Obama came out and said aliens are real. So, yes, it did happen.
Baby steps.
Yeah, yeah, that was a real baby step.
It
But
will happen.
yeah,
Disclosure will happen. I'm convinced because one reason, this is the truth. You
yeah,
cannot hide the truth forever. It's going to come busting out at some point, and let the
it's gone.
chips fall where they may. I'm all for catastrophic disclosure because to me, that's a misnomer. It's catastrophic non-disclosure.
Yeah,
Not telling the truth is catastrophic and it's causing untold damage to
yeah,
humanity. It's time for truth and transparency.
yeah, absolutely. So now we're just about out of time, and gosh, this was wonderful. I had fun, folks. Go to Amazon and put Preston Dennett in the search bar, and look at those 32 books. You're gonna find one that you can't live without. So thank you very much, Preston. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Aage.
Yeah. Thank you. And for all of you out there, if you like what you heard, please subscribe. That'll help us a lot. And until next time, be good to each other.
You